Yo, what's going on, everybody? It's your boy Naruto Explain here, and today it's time for your OBC, your original Boruto chief, to weigh in on the update we have regarding the Boruto anime, if for no other reason than the number of DMs and emails I've been getting regarding some of the new developments, and as per usual, there's misinformation being spread out by some bad actors seeking to gaslight Boruto fans and rub other things in their faces. Part of why I wanted to do this is because the last 2 weeks of December and the first week of January, I've been on a very long needed break to spend time with family, decompress. Videos did go up as per usual, and outside of the Black Clover chapter reviews and the Chainsman chapter reviews, nothing new got recorded. But I sat back and I watched the news and the reaction that we got, and I wanted to gather all my thoughts, put everything in bullet point fashion instead of a word for word script, so this doesn't turn into a yearly thing. Ever since Boruto's anime ended 3 years ago, the biggest question on every fan's mind is, when would the anime return? And in early 2024, I said, don't be shocked if you have a Attack on Titan style hiatus where the anime took 5 years between seasons to let the manga build more content. But with the news of yet another Boruto animator moving on and confirmation that the 4 Naruto episodes that Kishimoto wrote were scrapped and redone from scratch, this coming from a very reliable leaker in the anime community who has called a lot of anime announcements well in advance, like for instance the Kaguya-sama decision to have an anime original ending. We have some people that are taking all this new stuff and they're saying the Boruto anime is going to return in 2026, and I want to address it now because enough of you guys have been misled to where I want to address it up front. The shortest answer is I don't think, and I strongly don't think, you're going to see a Boruto anime episode outside of reruns that air on TV Tokyo in 2026. The earliest thing Naruto anime related that you're going to hear is going to be about those 4 Naruto episodes when we get closer to summer, when TV Tokyo has that big advertising event where potential sponsors buy rights to advertise their future slate of shows, and this will likely include those 4 special episodes, assuming, which is a big caveat, assuming that the time slot Naruto typically ran in, or that Boruto ran in, is not held by another series, likely this winter or this fall. That doesn't mean that there isn't pre-production going on with Boruto's anime. We quite literally got the announcement that part 2 for the anime was already greenlighted back in 2023. And this time last year, we got our strongest bit of evidence from Masayuki Koda, a veteran Naruto animator who cut his teeth on some of your favorite Naruto fights like Sasuke versus Danzo. Last year, we saw Koda with a stack of V-Jump magazine issues, recent ones that included Boruto 2 Blue Vortex content as recently as the issue of Sarada and Boruto versus Hidari, which rightfully led to people saying pre-production was probably happening because he was a director for a chunk of Boruto's anime, and when production fell apart due to the poor scheduling, the dude damn near killed himself trying to salvage the production by stepping down and taking on extra work. However, at the end of 2025, we got that major update. Koda suddenly removed Boruto from his official bio, an indication that he's no longer attached to the IP, despite being almost 20 years in the Naruto IP. He joins a list of others who played roles in Boruto's anime and Naruto's anime who have moved on. From the Masashi Kishimoto sensei handpicked talent Nishio, a controversial figure with Boruto fans, who is now one of the directors for Kaiju number 8, to Yamashita moving from Boruto back to Bleach to work on the 1,000-Year Blood War anime, to another going on to serve as a director for Blue Lock, to other talents working on some of the most recent Demon Slayer, Spy Family, and even Chainsaw Man content. So you've had some talent that have moved on. With Black Clover's anime returning later this year, and it being revealed that it's been in pre-production for a while now, since as far back as when the movie was in production, a lot of Boruto fans are either saying we're going to get an anime announcement in April 2026, since that will be 10 years since Boruto's manga debuted, and they're worried that since Black Clover is back right when Bleach's anime is wrapping up, its final season, that means that Boruto got the short end of the stick. And I want to address that because that's one of the biggest thorns in my side in terms of the concerns that people have been hitting me with. So personally, I don't think you're getting a 10th anniversary announcement. The logic is that since Black Clover got one on its 10th manga anniversary, that Boruto will get one too. But the circumstances for Black Clover's anime ending and Boruto's anime ending, while there are similarities, it's different, particularly when Black Clover made the announcement the manga was quite literally in the final volume of the franchise. The final battle was ongoing and in the climax, and the next 3 chapters of Black Clover do appear to be the final ones in the series, given that the final villain's been defeated. Black Clover's anime ended at chapter 270, and there are currently 389 chapters. Minus the last couple of years, Black Clover was a weekly manga before it switched to being a quarterly manga. And there are going to be about 120 chapters of material, give or take, which, since it's damn near all action in the final 3 arcs of the story, you're looking at about 60, maybe 65 episodes tops, depending on whether or not it follows the method that Bleach did and sticks solely to the manga. Hopefully it does that, same as I hope Boruto does as well. Right now, Boruto as a monthly manga has 41 chapters of material, 12 to close out part 1. And based on what we have in those last 12 chapters of part 1, that's really only about 8 episodes of material and 29 chapters of the time skip. That's roughly what you had when you're planning out the car arc. There were about 40 chapters of material between where the anime was when that arc was in pre-production and where the manga was at that moment in time. Minus a few bullshit episodes during that 50 episode stretch, you saw a difference in planning for the anime from the car actuation arc all the way up to the episode where Kurama died. It's for that reason, I don't think they're rushing the anime back anytime soon, as in this year, 2026, because you're gonna run into the same issue as before, getting too close to the manga material and run the risk of the anime cutting stuff that ends up being important later on, or God forbid, you're on the arc right before the current manga arc. It makes it impossible to plan what you're going to do. We were dangerously close to the climax of Boruto Part 1 when that Code Assault arc was being worked on. Hence, it had to go on hiatus, one of the reasons. So make no mistake, Coda leaving, that is a massive blow. And while Nishio is likely back in the fold once Kaiju number 8's final season's done, since that's also mostly action, you still have other talent that's gone, but it's not because they're on Black Clover or Bleach. And that's one of the biggest misconceptions that I'm seeing out here. There's this tendency for fans to see there's an anime studio and go, all the animators are just in one giant pool and they move from one project to another. But for a bigger studio like Pierro or Toei Animation, this isn't quite the case. Whereas you'll see Studio Mappa have a fuck ton of their talent overlap due to them being a smaller studio. That isn't quite the case for Studio Pierro. To understand this, we're gonna have to talk about how anime works. Shueisha is the copyright holder, and TV Tokyo is the group who owns the broadcast rights to series like Boruto, Yu-Gi-Oh!, Spy Family, Black Clover, Bleach, etc. They determine the airtime, they provide the funds, and they have the biggest say-so in the schedule that an anime gets, which just going seasonal does not equate to a better schedule. Boruto's anime, for all the ups and downs it had better schedules than some of the seasonal anime that have been out in the last 10 years. Look no further than One Punch Man Season 3, where animators did what Boruto animators did, which is show off the raw cuts that they made that were scrapped by the anime, or they were simplified due to the poor production schedule. And the second key animation phase having to sacrifice a lot of the fluidity of the animation in order to make the deadlines. The production committee and the license holders are your biggest culprits with most anime that run into problems. If there's a bad schedule, that's on them. That's everyone from Shueisha to TV Tokyo to Bandai Namco to Viz Media to other advertisers. Basically anyone who gets a return of investment. Attacking animators or writers is not the route that you should be going, which sadly that's what too many fans do. Which brings me to the biggest point of concern. Pierro has a different pipeline for their projects. Enough people do not realize this. The production pipeline for Black Clover is not the same as the one for Bleach, and it's not the same that is for Naruto and Boruto. And contrary to popular belief, Naruto and Boruto share the same pipeline. It's quite literally a whole different staff that is assigned to each pipeline. They all have their own teams. I want you to think of each team like being its own mini studio inside of Studio Pierro. That's why a Toei or a Studio Pierro can produce so many anime and run them all in the same calendar year or simultaneously without any issues. Naruto's production line is handled by Machiyama. Boruto and Naruto staff mostly overlap with each other and with the Anime Play It Cool guys. Another anime that falls under this mini studio. Bleach is a different production line. It falls under Tominaga. Basically, that's what we refer to as being Pierro Films. They just quite literally just renamed the Bleach production pipeline. The reason why Bleach's anime looks the way that it does right now is because those who sit at the head of that pipeline, Akadama Drive, one of my favorite series, has its blueprints all over Bleach 1000 Year Blood War and Amatsu-san. That is why the art style looks the way that it does. From the CGI being used to the color schemes and the compositing and etc. That's why Boruto's art style or even Naruto's art style look distinctively different when you compare it to 1000 Year Blood War or Akudama Dive. There are different people at the head of each of those ships. Black Clover falls under Komatsu and Isogi. That's why Black Clover looks so similar to a series like Twin Exorcists, another Studio Pierro production. Kingdom falls under a different production line. By default, unless there is a producer change, you have no reason to be concerned with Bleach or Black Clover's anime being back. The only concern you should have is the manga continuing to build up more material so that things can be properly planned, especially given Blue Vortex, the way that it is paced, is not allowing for a lot of filler. This is even more so, especially if they decide to rebrand the anime and include the Omnipotence arc as an intro, which personally, I think that's a bad idea, because if you're gonna rebrand the anime, the first thing that people see, if it's 12-year-old Boruto, not 15-year-old Boruto, the casual anime fans, which that's what you need to grow your brand, not hardcores, but casuals, they're not gonna be interested due to the perceived notions that already exist around 12-year-old Boruto. People see that version of Boruto, for right or for wrong, they say he's a brat. They say he doesn't train. That narrative has been ingrained in too many fans' heads. You have to move off of that as soon as possible. Whether that means doing what Kaguya-sama just did and doing a super long OVA where you make some changes to condense some stuff down, or you do what Boruto's editor continues to do, which is having the trend of taking smaller arcs from various manga and make them into movies and just extend the material while cutting out fluff, which that last arc of Omnipotence does have some fluff in it. Do what you have to, but in my opinion, you start a TV broadcast anime with Blue Vortex material and you go from chapter 1 up to chapter 15 or 16, whichever one where the official timeline says that the first arc ended. That brings me to clearing up some of the confusion that I see with some of the terms that get thrown around. And I know for a fact that at least 3 people that have been gaslighting Boruto fans are misusing the terms and the stages of production, because I've read these people refer to the different terms correctly before. So Boruto's anime has been in the pre-production phase. It's been there for a minute, but pre-production is complicated. So with pre-production, that's getting the funding ready, but not all the money raised for the anime goes to the anime staff. That's another big misconception that people will tell you, and that mostly comes due to ignorance. Hence, we have so many people say that they just need to increase the budget, when that's kind of an insult to the animators. Regardless of what they're getting paid, there's a lot of passion that goes into these things. The other thing covered in pre-production is considering the format and the schedule. That's basically, are we a weekly anime or are we a seasonal anime? Which the producer basically weighs in on the realistic nature of, can we maintain a consistent quality that will be approved of by the studio? Will it meet the standards? How many episodes can we realistically do? During this phase, the core staff is assigned from the producers to the series director to the script writers, other producer roles, people that are in charge of compositing and character design, and the art director. Basically, if you want to have pretty artwork that has shiny cotton color designs, even if it means that stretches of the animation aren't fluid, but it has some super pretty art, like certain anime that has amazingly well animated fights, but it has stretches of stiff or non-existent character acting for the non-action episodes, and happens to be one of the biggest IP in anime right now. If you know, you know. That's who gets to decide on the glossy, shiny, cotton candy color art, and whether or not a series sticks to the manga designs and the manga aesthetic, or if we go with what the Boruto anime had, which is basically more of a Kishimoto-esque anime design that infuses parts of Ikemoto style, but it still looks completely different from the manga. Then you have the planning for the series itself, basically the story, which is the most important part. If you have a compelling story, people will forgive inconsistencies in animation, in my experience. Basically, these are the people that decide how the anime story will progress. What or if or when you use any filler at all. What manga chapters will be stretched into bigger episodes or potentially sub-arcs. Boruto at times struggled with this due to the manga not being able to keep pace with what the anime had. And they use the excuse that, hey, this is like Dragon Ball Super. It's a parallel story, but the anime's its own continuity and the manga's its own continuity. But that's why we had all those contradictions. Dragon Ball Super and Boruto both followed that experiment, and both of them fell flat on their face. Boruto was a little bit more faithful to the manga story than Dragon Ball Super, but that was an experiment that they tried, and honestly, I think they failed. Then you have the decision on which projects are going to be kept in-house and which are going to get outsourced. Basically, this happens with every anime. Very rarely does a studio do 100% of all the animation, including the in-between animation, the smear frames, and etc. This is where Boruto's anime is likely at, the pre-production phase, given that Koda was removed from his role in the bio where he took it out. It's very possible, in my opinion, that we have a new producer for Boruto Part 2, which means there might possibly be a new character designer, which means that Nishio might be out as well, which that's going to make a lot of sense given he's currently overseeing Kaiju number 8 for what's about to be an amazing stretch of material before a controversial ending. And depending on when they're aiming for Boruto moving from pre-production to a production phase, Nishio might not be back in that role. Does this mean that, say, Shang-Chi Wong, the guy who did cuts like Naruto versus Sasuke and that final battle in Shippuden, or Boruto's flash forward sequence, or Boruto versus Nue, stretches of Naruto and Sasuke versus Jigen, does that mean that he might step into the role because he has his own production team, his own anime studio basically? It's possible. And if I'm not mistaken, I'm pretty sure that his mentor was Koda. So that would be very poetic. That'd be like a passing of the torch in a way. My guy Sauron would be able to better explain that. I'm like 90% sure that he is one of the proteges for Koda though. I wouldn't be mad at it. I would champion it. The guy is a major Boruto fan, especially a fan of the manga. If you keep up with this artwork that he's drawn for Blue Vortex, you can see exactly where he would go artistically, and I would not be mad at it. He still does a blend of Kishimoto's art style, but it's a lot closer to Ikemoto's art style than Nishio's. I would not be mad if he got that role at all, because whoever he picks as art director would probably reflect that style. Now, further evidence of there being pre-production obviously goes back to the initial announcement, but also more than one set of people who have worked on the anime, either directly or as freelancers, they're openly reading the manga, which means that they're getting familiar with the content the way that Koda did last year. That's a really big deal. As a fan, a solid pre-production schedule is what you should want. A great example of this being, ask yourself, why was Jujutsu Kaisen Season 1 so special? Why was Chainsaw Man Season 1 so well animated and so well paced? You can argue about the decision with the art style, but just from a pacing perspective and an animation perspective, it was absolutely gorgeous, both of those seasons. JJK Season 1, Chainsaw Man Season 1. They each had 18 months of dedicated pre-production before they ever moved into anime production. Which anime production, that's where the episodes are written out in full. That's where things get storyboarded. That's where you get your 20 to 30 key animators who are assigned to the episodes. Basically, these are the people that cook up what we like to call sakuga. The background artists, they get assigned here, which the trend that you see with a lot of series now, like say with Demon Slayer, there's this trend to use 3D backgrounds for animation and the compositing and the digital framing, as well as to use tools to do color cleanup. Boruto right now, I don't think it's in that spot, whereas a series like Black Clover is in that spot. But again, the circumstances are different. Now, Naruto's voice actress towards the end of last year did say she finished up her recording, which that's usually what you see in post-production. But I chalk that up to a translation issue, because given the news that we have in context about the 4 special episodes having been completed last year, which would have been around the time that she made that statement about recording, it quite literally lines up with her saying that the dubbing's done. Naruto does not have lines in Boruto 2 Blue Vortex. Even if you do filler flashbacks, it's too soon for that process. That would mean that the Boruto 2 Blue Vortex episodes are already animated, which means we would have already had a key visual out. Could she be referring to the end of Boruto Part 1? Possibly, but the argument is stronger. That was for the 4 special episodes. And if there was any Boruto connection, it's because either it's a extended OVA or there's a movie that's going to rearrange stuff from the end of Part 1, just given again who the editor for Boruto is, and the fact that whatever anime you can think of that Shueisha has been putting in movie theaters, he's played a big role in all that stuff happening. I want to stress this again because we have disingenuous people who say that Boruto is a breeding ground. So by that logic, so too was Naruto, because the talent that was brought in to be groomed on Naruto, it was done at a similar rate. Any animation issues you see, whether it be Hell's Paradise Season 1 or Boruto Part 1 or One Punch Man Season 3, it isn't due to a lack of talent. It's always 9 times out of 10 the grueling schedule. To dive deeper into this, Studio Pierro, they have a tendency to give 4 weeks on average to work on episodes. On one episode, you get 4 weeks worth of work done. But for contrast, other studios like Toei Animation give 10 weeks for one episode. I read somewhere that MAPPA is given 12 for JJK at some point. So for Toei Animation, for the One Piece stuff, that's 2.5 months for one episode. Episodes are usually in production simultaneously though. So you have 5 or 6 episodes that one animator might be doing cuts on in that 3 or 4 week window. However long their window is, they're working on multiple episodes. Naruto Shippuden had 6 weeks for reference. Boruto, based on the information I've been able to scrounge up, has typically been about 3 to 4 weeks. And towards the end of the anime, I mean, it was a nightmare schedule, like 80, 90 cuts being required in 9 hours worth of work, which is absolutely crazy. For this reason, that's part of why you'll see some episodes that look drastically different, because it isn't just Pierro animators working on it. They work with other studios to produce the episodes, likely for in-between shots, but there are other instances, a lot of instances, where they outsource and they still oversee to other companies like Studio Mouse or Studio Bus, which the latter's worked on Demon Slayer, so you're not getting scrub animators. It goes back to, quite literally, the production committee giving you a solid schedule. It's not about money, it's not about talent, it's quite literally time and the production committee. That's why some schedule gaps happen, where you have instances where the episode might quite literally be finished hours before the broadcast. Or in the case of a movie, like say Naruto the Last or Boruto the movie in 2014 and 2015 respectively, you had animators that ended up in the hospital or sleeping on their desks from what I remember a decade ago. There's passion here. That's why you see episodes like 189, 175, 65, 13, 204, 135, 216, 217, 218, where the animation it is top shelf. But those episodes, they aren't possible without the passion of the animators and, more importantly, the healthy schedule they had. Kawaki's introduction got treated with a fuck ton of love for it, but it also had time to bake in the oven, longer than your average episode. So this hopefully will be my last video where I need to explain the Boruto anime situation. From now on, I'm just going to link this video. I try to be super thorough on this one and answer all the major questions and explain things that I feel need to be said. Do not blame Black Clover being back for the delay. Just enjoy the manga for now and we'll see where it goes. I'm personally sticking to my guess that I made in late 2023, early 2024, which is that we don't get anything super concrete until 2027 in the form of a teaser, whether it be a key visual or a key trailer teaser, and that we don't get airtime until 2028. By then, based on the pacing of the manga, Blue Vortex would have had another 40-ish chapters, depending on what month in 2027, 2028 that we're in. And we're probably entering the final arc of Blue Vortex, but the anime would have been moving from pre-production planning, which is where I think we're at right now, to a more tangible work being done. Hence, I think a teaser sometime in 2027 might be more realistic. And I think that with Koda removing his role and a few Boruto writers removing their role, I think is a sign that we have a new producer assigned, and a new producer might mean a new series director. Make sure to share this with those who you know are curious about the anime. Next time you see an anime update, it's either going to be for the release of the 4 Naruto special episodes, which I will be reviewing when they drop, or it's going to be a teaser for Boruto's anime. Again, make sure to share this with anyone you know who needs clarification. This is a long one, but I do feel like this was a much needed video.